Good morning, everyone. My name is Corinne Buckley. I'm a planner here with the North Central Texas Council of Governments in the Environment and Development Department. And I'm really excited to be moderating this webinar today on AI challenges and opportunities for water resources. This webinar is hosted by NCTCOG and it is funded by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency through the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. If you're not familiar with what NCTCOG is, it is a voluntary association of by and for local governments, and we exist to address the regional planning needs present within our 16 county jurisdiction. NCTCOG is one of 24 regional councils in Texas, and as part of NCTCOG's water quality management planning work, we host webinars on water quality topics every quarter. So if you have any future topics for these webinars, please feel free to send them my way. My email is there on the screen. It is cbuckley@nctcog.org. So I'm now going to go over a couple of housekeeping items. Today's webinar is scheduled to last until 12:30. The presentation slides and recording from this webinar will be posted under the green banner called Webinars on NCTCOG's website. That is linked on the page. I'll also be sending out follow-up emails about today's webinar to all of those who registered. So if you did not register and you would like to receive these follow-up emails, again, please email me and let me know. And I can also put my email in the chat so that you have that. I do want to remind you to try and please keep your microphone on mute when you're not sharing or asking a question. This helps us eliminate distractions. And after the presentation, there will be time for questions and discussion. And I will share information on how to submit those questions when we get to that point. So today we'll be starting with some polling questions, and then we'll be hearing from Sheila Chowdhury and Gage McElroy, who will be presenting Fort Worth Water driving performance through data analytics and dashboards, and then we will get into that discussion and Q&A afterwards. But before we get started, I'm going to try and run some polls, and we will see how this works. This is to just get an idea of who's here with us, the experience you have with the topic. So if you give me just a moment, you should be seeing the first poll launch on your screen now. Once you've submitted your response, you may need to hit the X in the corner of the pop-up. They don't always close automatically. So I'll give you guys about 30 seconds to submit your responses. Okay, so I'll close that poll. You should be able to see the results in the chat. Looks like we've got a good percent from government entities. If you did put the other category, I'd be curious to know where you're from. If you would interested in putting it in the chat, that would be great. The next couple polls, talking about your awareness with AI tools and usage. So I'm going to launch the next poll. Okay. We've got a good number of responses. Looks like most of you are consider yourselves beginners. So that's good. We're just getting started. If you have utilized any AI tools in your work, curious to know your level of competency with those, if those are tools you're using frequently, you feel like you're an expert on, or again, you're a beginner, I'd imagine, as we've got a lot of beginner responses from the previous poll. That's kind of where people are falling. Okay, so I'll close that. So then I've got a couple questions regarding AI as it relates to data integration and analytics. So curious to know whether your organization is utilizing AI for that data management aspect. So seeing some mixed responses. Some people have not used it, are experimenting, got a couple that use it regularly, and then a good amount of people that are not sure. So that is okay. Okay, great. So then I will close that and launch the last poll, which is regarding any concerns with utilizing these types of tools for data integration and analytics. And this one is a multi-select, so you should be able to select multiple. Okay, so it's looking like data inaccuracies, privacy concerns, integration challenges are kind of those top responses. Training and educating staff as well. Okay, great. I'll close that last poll. Thank you, everyone, for submitting your responses. It's great to know kind of the audience that we have with us today. So we'll now move into the presentation. So I'll introduce our speakers. So our first speaker is Sheila Chowdhury. Miss Sheila Raman Chowdhury is the Assistant Water Director of Strategic Operations at the City of Fort Worth Water Department. With over 25 years experience, Ms. Chowdhury leads the Strategic Operations Division overseeing the horizontal planning, vertical planning, asset management, 5-year capital improvements plan, SCADA, and the central laboratory. Ms. Chowdhury's career is in the municipal sector, both private and public, and she holds a Master of Engineering degree from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in Civil and Environmental Engineering, and she is a licensed PE in Texas and Michigan. Our second speaker is Gage McElroy. Gage is an asset management advisor with 34 years of experience in civil engineering and AM planning for water, wastewater, stormwater, and electric infrastructure. His comprehensive understanding of implementation challenges and direct experience in translating theory to practice is gained from leading small to large scale AM programs. Gage knows what is required to apply and deliver quality systems and outcomes on projects, and with his unique background in civil and environmental engineering and practical experience in AM implementation, he provides invaluable input to GHD's utility AM projects and helps municipal clients normalize AM approaches into regular business practices. Furthermore, Gage is a primary instructor for advanced AM and risk analysis courses at the University of Wisconsin. Gage received his BS in civil engineering from Texas A&M University and Masters of Engineering from the Johns Hopkins University. And so Sheila and Gage, I will hand it over to you. And Sheila, you're welcome to take control when you're ready.
All right, I took control. Can you all see the slides? I'm unable to actually. It went away from my screen.
If you click it, if you're just seeing the boxes and you're seeing like the presentation option at the top, if you click that, then it should open the slides again.
Got it. Thank you.
Mhm.
Sorry about that. Yeah, the presentation kind of disappeared from my.
Sheila, do you want me to try? And you can just have me advance the couple or?
Yes, please. I am
Okay.
not seeing the slides, so I don't know where I'm at, actually. Sorry about
Okay.
that.
All righty. I've got them, Sheila.
Yes.
So
Go ahead.
we'll
Actually, I think
tag
the
team.
first,
That's right.
yeah, I think the first few slides are actually yours until, yeah.
Okay, I can get started and then I'll just kind of say it to kind of turn it right back to you. So first and
Yes.
foremost, everybody, hello and howdy and all that good stuff. And I hope everybody's having a great day. Thank you very much for taking time to sit in to our webinar that we're having today. Looking forward to the presentation as well as questions, answers, and any discussion that we can have. So what we're going to be talking about today is some work that ourselves, myself at GHD and City of Fort Worth have been working on for several years now around their asset management program. And one of the things that we had identified early on, and one of the areas that we really wanted to focus on, is helping develop a consistent, if you will, performance framework that the organization or the utility can use to help identify not just performance issues, but really remaining life and when we need to do activities for our different assets that we own and maintain. And so this particular effort that we're going to be talking about today was really focused on how do we start to leverage existing data that we have through our work order management systems and so forth. And so we had a couple of objectives that we wanted to meet with this particular work. Really, that first objective was really understanding again about how we can create and apply a data-driven performance kind of framework again so that we can be consistent, transparent, and understand where our decisions come from. How do we do it then also with existing data from our maintenance management system? And then from that information, how do we then bring this together to actually create some analytics, that can be interactive, that we can then update and change and so forth over time. And so we did this as a pilot overall, but really that pilot was based upon being able to do this such that we could then potentially start to roll it out to other facilities and other assets within the city. And so we're going to be talking today about that pilot, about the results of that pilot, and about what those next steps are and so forth as we go forward. Let's see here. I can advance. There we go. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it now over to Sheila, and she's going to give us some background overall on the program.
Engage. I think I have control. All right. So just wanted to give an overview of the Fort Worth regional system. Here's a kind of a snapshot of everything. A pretty large system here. We have about our water, wastewater, and reclaim services and all the miles that you see over there. This is all coming out of our 5 water treatment plants totaling 512 MGD. And we have one reclamation facility, 166 MGD, and actually a second one coming online in the next couple of years. Here you also see how many employees we have, and that's just in our water department within the city, and around 300,000, over 300,000 metered connections. So if we move over to the map, it's a pretty large area. We have about 450 square miles of just retail service, and we have a lot of wholesale customers, around 30 water and 33 water and around 30 wastewater. And that's adding another 750 square miles. So retail customers are around 1 million folks and still growing, and wholesale customers adding about 500,000 on top of that. So, 1.5 million customers over 760 square miles. So it's a pretty large service area, as you can see on the map. We're also highlighting the west side water treatment plant because it's on the west side of our city. Very unique name, I guess. But just to give you an idea of locale and the size of our system. So we have about our CIP, we have about $3 billion over a span of 5 years. So a lot of improvement projects, just to give you an idea of how much we work on. Here's a sort of a snapshot of the Strategic Operations Division, which is one of 6 divisions under the water utility. And as part of my bio, all these different groups that go under that are listed on the left side and kind of highlighting the asset management portion of it. But it is, the reason for this schematic is to show how all those different groups kind of integrate into the goals and this group's purpose. So, as you can see on the right side, we have 3 main goals for this division: breaking down divisional silos, facilitating free flow of data across divisions, meaning whatever data we receive, our goal is to share it with the rest of the utility and outside to help with the third goal, which is helping with tactical and strategic decisions. So our asset management presentation today is going to focus on how we achieve that. So a little, I know it's a very busy slide here, but we've been working at this for a while. And the different colors mean the different stages of our asset management. So really, we're trying to get more green into our next years. So green stands for actually using asset management for decision making. And we were able to achieve some of that back in the 10-year span, 1995 to 2005. And this slide is a little bit old because we're still working on it. There is some green going on today, but we're not quite there at the production level, like to use that for decision making. So today's presentation ties into those first steps where we are using asset management for decision making. But as you can see, there's a lot of different tasks that kind of lead into asset management. If you look at the bottom right, the 2015 to 2019 area, that we have some orange there where we've gotten to the risk and resiliency stage for a lot of our assets. So working on it, it is a long term plan, but the constant progress is what we are shooting for. I stole this slide from the back of the presentation, but they always say you need to, if you want people to take away things, you need to show it a couple of times or more. But this is the end state we are trying to achieve. And each of those lines could represent a flow of data, flow of information, or the decision step making, whichever way you want to take away from this, but really trying to set up that decision matrix and how those different areas interact with each other. What we're trying to focus on is the data resources side on the bottom right here. that's what we're trying to achieve internally, a singular database where we can house all of the information for the rest of the utility to use and utilize the data however they need it for their decisions. I think that's my last one, so I'll hand it back to Gage. Thanks.
Awesome, thank you. And so just first and foremost, I want to make sure that I'm sharing my screen as well. Okay, so I have my screen up right now, and it should be on an agenda slide. And I just want to confirm that everybody can see it full screen and you're not seeing the speaker notes. Is that a fair statement? Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. All those confirmations. All right, so I kind of know what I'm presenting here. So what I'm now going to do is go through and talk about an asset management framework. What do we mean by that, and how are we working within it? The application of a performance framework, and we're going to be talking, when we talk about that, a little bit about what do we mean by, let's say, performance frameworks that might be a little bit more subjective, or how do we move to objective kind of frameworks or decision making, and then where does that subjectivity still come in, and why is it important in some ways for us to make sure that we do think about that. We're then going to look at some results, and the results we'll be looking at are the results of the actual application of the performance framework, as well as some of the dashboard reporting methods that we're using overall. And then we're going to talk about some lessons learned that we had as part of the pilot that we'll take into consideration as we look at rolling out and other opportunities for applying it. So with that, I'm going to keep going here. So I've already talked about the objectives. Remember, the key takeaways here are: how do we apply a performance management or performance decision framework? How do we leverage existing data? And how do we do this? Then we're going to do this in a pilot before we try to start applying it to all the other specific assets. So this is a snapshot, or let's say just a high-level kind of view of the overall asset management decision-making framework. There's a lot of, let's say, standards out there. We may have, like folks around asset management may have heard of ISO 55000 in that series, as far as different elements around best practices in asset management and what we should kind of be looking at and applying, especially around utilities or and so forth, or different asset owners. Then there's, of course, the US EPA framework, which has been around a while. And then there's other frameworks that all these frameworks work through and build upon, like IAM. But what I'm trying to do here is show, this is kind of like a real basic look, okay, of what we think about when we think about asset management. And really, it's that dashed red line that you kind of see there. That's really our decision-making kind of framework. As you can see, we have policy objectives, and we have our organization structure that sits above that really helps make everything work. But it's really these other boxes in here that these are the things we do day in and day out with regards to assets, decision-making, and then how that drives, our investments and the work that we do every day. And really the focus of this particular work that we're looking at was really on those two green boxes. We're really looking at our asset data and how it informs our risk framework, which is where we start to bring in probability of failure and how we look at how assets fail, and then bringing that with its consequence of failure, looking at it from a risk, so that then can be an input into further decision-making frameworks around what are the best approaches for investment, and then how do we build a capital plan and an operations and maintenance budget plan to take forward for the next year. Our focus is on those areas. And so if we drill in to those two areas, that risk framework is really kind of made up of a couple of performance terms that we look at. Again, that's probability of failure and consequence of failure. And when we look at both probability of failure and consequence of failure, we can then further drill in and start to see the type of data and information that we want to help inform that. And we're going to get into those details, especially for the work that we were doing here. The focus was really around that probability of failure and how that translates into end of life, and then actual action and steps that we need to do from a decision-making perspective. But you can kind of see some of all the other areas that are important when we start to think about, how we bring risk together, how we manage risk, and so forth. And we'll be talking a little bit about that as we show some of the results. Now, I'm going to step back here. Sorry about that. Not sure why it jumped on me. But what we're looking at here is the idea that assets can fail in more than one way. Okay, and so it's basically kind of a simple little decision model. And as you can kind of see and look at this model overall, if you look on the, it's basically a decision making kind of an aspect. And one area we can look at that we always think about as an asset could fail, we think about condition, and that's really its physical mortality. And really an asset, it's just how long it can last before I have to rehabilitate it and so forth. And that's really, again, about it's just overall consumption. But there's other ways that we might want to be thinking about reinvesting in those assets, even if it has physical condition or physical life left. And one of those is capacity, for example. If it's not big enough, if it's just not going to process it or something's changed in the amount of flow, we're going to have to do a redesign. Another one is around financial efficiency. This is the idea that you might have, let's say, a wastewater pumping station. It's pretty new. The pumps are just, they've got a lot of life left in them. But because those developments never came through, or it's just operating at a really inefficient point overall because it's oversized, that might be a need to go in and actually do something differently, just because from an energy perspective, we're really operating very inefficiently overall. And that the other one that is the one that we really focused on a lot for this particular work is the reliability piece, is really understanding failure rates and looking at different ways that assets can fail from that perspective and putting in a performance framework around it. But these are all the different areas that we're looking at when we start to think about performance overall. So as we go forward, the next thing we started thinking about is, all right, so now if we're going to go forward and we're going to do this work, what are our objectives? What are we really trying to get out of this at the end of the day? And so one of the first things is that the utility actually has a performance framework that they had done previously, but they just always had really hard time trying to apply it. And the reason they were having applying it because again, it was a little bit more subjective. It was about what people thought versus having it be able to be data driven. So that's one of the limitations we might have in some of our, let's say, more traditional methods that we might want to look at. At the same time, we don't want to, overcomplicate things. So we need to keep it simple, right? So it needs to still be, things that we can kind of talk about in plain English, right? Because it's the stuff we do every day. But at the same time, we want to have that complexity behind it so that it actually does give us some more granularity and some more better, if you will, overall data-driven kind of insights. Dashboards were part of the thing. We wanted to be able to use dashboards, not just from a reporting perspective, but how do we lose the spreadsheet? How do we move away from Excel-based, type of analyses, and then build that analysis, build those analytics right into a business intelligence tool like Power BI, which is what we used for this particular pilot, and actually take advantage of that. And then be able to then demonstrate that, that ability of those dashboards and what those different functionality is so that we can start to think about it, not just from a report and a visualization perspective, but from a decision-making perspective and giving better insights. And so how do we make the complex simple? Okay, there's the 5-second rule, sometimes I tend to talk a little bit, so I got to bring myself back. It's like we got to be able to get an idea across pretty quickly and visually is a great way to do that. You can sometimes look at data and not necessarily see a trend, but you can see trends pretty readily when you start looking at it that way. You also think about that idea around the inverted pyramid or whatever, but the idea that what we have at the top or whatever, there might be a lot of detail around that and all the things, but at the same time we want to start to bring that information to that piece that's really important and the stuff that really willing to look at. Less is more at the end of the day, again, a lot of detail behind it, but it's how do you bring it all together? Now, one thing I'll say on the less is more is there is a tendency at times that we want to move towards one single score to then tell us a lot of information. But what we also have to understand is that there's a lot of detail that goes into that score. And so you have to understand what the drivers are, right? So we can't sometimes make just decisions based upon one score, but so we want to make it less complex, but at the same time, we want to have the detail behind it. And then, of course, we want it to tell the story kind of overall, like from a data story telling perspective. And ultimately, we want it for better insights, right? Again, I've said it before, increased visibility into the data. I've worked with a lot of organizations, utilities that have great data, but it's just as they say, and I had one client tell me this, he said, Gage, I need to get the data out of the dark and into the hands of decision makers, right? So it's getting that visibility. Actually building out the business logic so that we can do the improved decision making. And the whole idea here is so we can focus our efforts and be more efficient and reduce costs and optimize our work overall. So those are the goals and what we're looking to do. So when we talk about conventional methods and as far as applying frameworks, the idea that assets can fail in multiple ways, we've been talking about that for a decade now, right? We understand that, we need to look at things from a multi-criteria perspective. But it's really about, well, what are those, performance, if you will, frameworks that we can then start to look at to say, well, where is it okay? And let's say a scale of 1 to 5, as you might be looking at things, where is it okay or we're doing okay versus where are we starting to move towards, okay, now we got to start focusing on these assets and to the point where, okay, we're near failure. We need to actually have action, okay, on these assets at this point. And we want those decisions to not just drive capital replacement per se, but we also want to be able to have good data that it can help inform us on maintenance intervals, the type of maintenance we might need to be doing, and then also understanding which assets we might want to do more maintenance on versus other assets maybe even doing less maintenance on. And so to be able to do this, type of thing, we want to be able to then apply, these frameworks. And this framework here is also built around those different failure modes. This is the existing framework that Fort Worth has or had been using. But the challenge that we were hearing is when we apply it, it's difficult. Okay, it means that we're sitting in a room, we're talking about it, and different people might have some different perspectives. Even though there's some guidance here as far as, well, what these scores mean, the application of it just became, tenuous and didn't really go forward. And so what we wanted to do is think about how do we take this type of a performance framework and move away from, let's say, more of the subjective or less data-driven to more of that data-driven, objective, if you will, framework overall. And so when we thought about that, and as we were going through it, we also were thinking about it from a couple of, if you will, guiding principles, kind of a thing. And one of them is you start thinking about this idea around, are we just reacting to things, right? Versus are we kind of like looking ahead and so forth. So in one sense, if you just look at the old map, we have our map, we're trying to figure out where to go. We're still kind of in that analog mode and we're trying to figure out where, just imagine what it used to take us to get someplace, the old map books. For those that are old like I am, we didn't have GPS and so forth. But now we have data-driven GPS, and it's always updating, and it's always kind of, getting us in that right direction. There's really no more second guessing. It's just the facts, and we can go there. So we're taking some of the human element out of it now, right? Because of that aspect. Another way of kind of looking at it is from a subjective to a data-driven kind of perspective is, again, we know a lot already about our assets and so forth, and so we have good intuitive, institutional knowledge. But there are those times or whatever where, by having data-driven type of solutions and being able to look at it from a digital perspective, what we're able to do is maybe see those things that we may not be seeing, that are maybe under the surface. And maybe it's, how much money we're spending on certain maintenance activities versus just replacing those assets versus continuing to fix them. Or as they continue to fail, what other potential issues could we be having in another place and so forth. So really, those were the goals that we wanted to be able to start to achieve. It was decided, as Sheila had indicated, that we would start and apply this at the West Side Water Treatment Plant. Just a little bit of background, and it wouldn't be a good talk unless we had a process flow here, and showing a little bit of process engineering. But we have it's an 18 MGD facility. It's an advanced water treatment and filtration facility. And so the work that we did looked at each of these major unit processes throughout and all the different assets that made up the facility. And we, again, were using the work order data that comes from their Maximo system, which is a really good system. It's built well, it's structured well, and they've done a good job in actually capturing a lot of their work order information. But as we talk about data, we'll also find out that as well as the data has been good, there's also been some challenges in that data. So one of the first things we did is once we got that data overall, we had to kind of go through a cleaning process. So we took our source data again we had an overall asset register that we built. We had the work order history information. And then we also started to bring in some areas around chance of failure, which is about operational configurations when we have systems out of service. And we kind of brought all that information together and realized that we needed to do some cleaning on it. So we used some different tools around that, like Python, Excel functions, and different other filters, to where we then can create that asset register or database that we then could bring in to our Power BI, to where we can then do our different data analytics. And again, like I said, the overall data was good, but it was incomplete in some areas, right? So it was not 100% complete. And in those kind of incomplete areas, there were some inconsistencies in the way maybe some of the failure codes or failure reasons were put in. But the fact that they had failure codes and failure reasons was a huge plus overall. The work orders had timestamps. Okay, so we understood when they were open, when they were closed. We understood, was it a corrective maintenance work order? We understood, was it just preventative maintenance? And so we were able to parse those different work orders out to understand, all right, which of these work orders are really giving us information around failures, right? Those, in the sense that when not just preventative maintenance, but the stuff that we have to go fix because it broke and so forth. And by bringing that information together, we were able to start to see some insights and overall, and it really started to give us some ideas around where we can improve our data and then where we could take it from there. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about the actual application of this and kind of look at some of the results. So what we have worked with the city before is creating a dashboard around a dynamic asset management plan for their Village Creek water reclamation facility. And so we kind of built upon that framework overall. But one of the things we did differently here is we focused a lot more on, again, the performance in the reliability area and using the data-driven kind of solution. But what I'm going to take us through here in a second, and as part of a little bit of a demonstration, is looking at how we kind of brought together condition scores, both from an age base and then staff input, how we looked at capacity overall, how we did our reliability scoring, financial efficiency scoring, how we brought together probability and consequence of failure to look at risk, what those results look like, and then how we can also use it for some work order analysis overall. Again, what we want to do is people still make decisions. Okay, these are all precursors to artificial intelligence, to large language models like ChatGPT and so forth that are going to help us out as we do things. But always we want to be enabling people, because people still make decisions overall. So what I'm going to do here, and we'll see how this works, is what we're looking at here is a overall dashboard for the Fort Worth Water Asset Management System. As I indicated, one of the buttons, if you see over there on the wastewater side, we had started building out for their tactical asset management plan. We've moved over to the water side. Now we started at west side, and the goal here is to continue building this out, the actual reports and the dashboards going forward. So this is the overall kind of landing page, if you will, that we would put together for that particular facility. We have some basic information around reliability, around kind of like what its overall probability of failure kind of score is. It's a 2. It's a young plant. It's one of their newer plants over some of the assets that are there. Up in the upper left-hand corner there, you can see how many assets that's total as part of this is about 400. And then each of these buttons that you see through here, on here, like asset inventory and so forth, we're going to go through each of these, but these take us to different areas where we then can do our analysis and actually see some of the results. So the first one we'll kind of drill into here a little bit is asset inventory. And so the asset inventory, there's different ways that we can kind of look at this and consider it. But what you're looking at here really is some information about assets by sub-process, and then also we looked at it by asset class. But if you put together a good hierarchy and you put together a good list of all your assets, you'll then be able to really look at information in different ways, right? You can see that the majority of the assets that they have are pumps overall in here on the right-hand side. But we also have, as you go through it as well, that one of the more important assets are going to be these analytical meters, because there's a lot of SCADA and different type of control systems that are part of the overall work here. I'll just keep going. And you can, again, and what's nice about Power BI is you can drill in and you can get information and see information kind of overall. Again, here, what we're looking at are now some of the condition scores. On the left-hand side, we were kind of trying out a different way of looking at condition overall versus the right-hand side, which is your typical histogram or bar chart. You can kind of see the scores down below. But what's also important is you see the table below it, right? It's important not just to know what the score is, but what's the driver or what's the input into those tables, and why is it showing up potentially as a 4 or potentially one day as a 5, and you're like 1 to 4 scales and so forth. And if you'll kind of look, and as we kind of continue to go through here, it's not just physical condition. We're looking at reliability. We're looking at capacity. We're looking at financial efficiency. And so there's other drivers that are like indicating that there's action potentially that might be needed here. And again, these are the different ways that an asset could potentially fail overall. From probability of failure, we'll move to consequence of failure and risk overall. And so what we're looking at here again is on the right-hand side is more of a traditional risk plot. You'll see that there's these different colors that are bands. These represent risk management zones. And depending upon which risk management zone we might be in, it could change the way we think about maintenance and some operational considerations overall. And of course, we want to try to keep most of the assets that out of the red area as we can. That's really a main goal overall. On the left-hand side, we're looking at something called operational risk. And operational risk is really about understanding you may have a risk profile overall, but you have to take units out of service. And so that risk changes. And so this is with the idea that as units go in and out of service, we want to have that ability to understand where our risk goes up, and that could help inform potentially work management and the actual prioritization of work orders that we might have overall. I hit the wrong button there, so let me go back right here. Apologies there. Let me get that started again, and then I'm going to jump right over to here, and I'm going to show you a couple more things. So this one right here is where we're looking at, this is kind of a work order analysis piece where we brought the work orders in, and the red are corrective maintenance, and the green is preventative maintenance. And so what we found out is that whereas they're doing a lot of the preventative maintenance, they're just doing it as all part of one work order. So that's why it's kind of coming out like this. But what we can do is be able to look in and see where they're doing a lot of corrective maintenance and so forth. And then again, of course, be able to see this out as a report, but then also be able to look at it in some different ways. But when we get into the reliability area, here we're able to take the work order data and start to look at reliability metrics like on the left-hand side, mean time to repair, and versus on the right-hand side, the mean time between failures. And one thing we want to do is we want our mean time to repairs to go down, because that means we're doing good work order management. whereas mean time between failures, we want those to go up, but you can see they're going down. So even though it's a young plant, we get to start to see the insights that they are seeing increased failure rates. And then from there, we can look at availability, we can look at uptime, we can look at other areas like what you're looking at here, like cost of corrective work orders on the left-hand side versus failure rates. We can also change the scoring process right within Power BI and understand, well, what does that mean from a 1 to 5 score? So we can use those scoring to then help with overall actions that we might want to focus on. And then ultimately we can also drill in into individual assets. And for example, here we're looking at analytical meters. And here we can then see more information specifically about those assets. And again, understanding what's driving potentially some of these other results and so forth. And so, and again, we can also look at it by different periods of time, and then again to be able to see based upon those certain dates what might have been happening overall, and use that to help drive some of our overall information for decision making. So those are some of the results, and kind of seeing them in that dashboard overall. There's a lot more detail behind that that we could talk about and get into some of the discussion. But what are some of the findings and lessons learned overall, right? Well, performance scoring, is most applicable to assets that have consistent work order information. There's a lot that has to do with, it's a little bit of the garbage in, garbage out. And so if we're going to actually make good decisions, data governance is really important, and having complete asset data is important, and AKA work order management overall, very important to be able to do that. Data associated with the work orders needs to be categorized correctly, such that we can understand which ones are corrective versus preventative, so we can use that in our reliability work. Now, data for Fort Worth, even though it's good, it is a little inconsistent, but between some of their different facilities. And so that's one of the areas we really want to focus on, is not just the completeness, but also the overall consistency. And then the data analysis at the end of the day is going to be limited, right? To not just some of the information that we're talking about on the work orders, but the type of detail we provide overall as to the why, what the causes are, and then what some of the remedies are and so forth that we've been looking at. And I'd say kind of like next steps really then are we're going to be looking to take our Power BI pilot, build it out into the city's dashboard system, which is Looker, is what they use, and also to look at integrating it with Maximo's Asset Health Insights, which actually has some built-in APIs that could potentially be working with some of their other information. So overall, it's a decision support system that we're building, and happy to talk more about it and to take any questions. And this is just a thank you to all the folks that were involved in this work. And so with that, I'm going to give it back to Corrine, and I see we've got a little bit of time left for some Q&A.
Great, thank you so much. So we are now going to jump into the Q&A session. So if you do have a question, you can either use the raise hand function, or you can put your questions into the chat box and I can read them out loud. I did want to kind of kick off the Q&A session. So you talked about the objective-driven data and the data-driven objective data. And so I'm wondering if you can kind of go into a bit more detail about that kind of relationship between the two and how they can work in tandem, so that we're not, completely relying on the data-driven aspect, but kind of tapping into both and the role that they both kind of play in this work.
Sure. Yeah. So I think that's a good question, because I kind of said at the beginning that, a lot of our frameworks, or where we're doing something, are subjective, right? It's what we think. And then, of course, we want things to be objective, factual, right? But at the end of the day, we don't want a single framework that we all have to sit or have to apply, in a sense, to our utilities, let's say, right? We have different size utilities, we have different services we provide. And because of that, what's important is to build that framework with some subjectivity in it that helps us right size and make it appropriate for that particular application. But what we next want to do is understand how do we now take that framework that's important to, let's say, Fort Worth Water Utility and says, this is what's important to us, okay? But then how do we create it such now that it'll be data driven and we'll start to remove any further subjectivity, creating an objective kind of an approach or application. And so that's what our focus was, and that's what we're doing with those scoring frameworks by defining specific business rules around that. Starts still somewhat subjective, right? Because that's who we are. That's what we need to know how to do that. But we then move towards that objective decision-making state by building in the rules that are going to be consistently applied for all the different assets.
Thank you. I see we have one hand raised. Roberto Vega, do you want to come off mute and ask your question?
Yes, thank you. I'm glad you presented your dashboard. It was very informative and in depth. You guys captured a lot of data. I guess I was curious, you had mentioned the use of AI, but this is a Power BI dashboard you also mentioned. So was AI utilized to create the dashboard, or is there a component of AI feeding the dashboard?
So to answer directly, no, AI was not used to create the dashboard. AI overall, as a application, and let's say, in a lot of areas, especially in utilities and so forth, is still in that emerging space. It's here, but it's still in that emerging space. And Fort Worth, is always going to be looking for those opportunities with AI. This particular work that we're looking at and we're working in is really a predecessor to that, right? It's really how do we get the framework correct that we then look at for AI solutions to then help apply it, if you will. So I think that's the main point here is AI as a as an approach overall is super powerful. But then that's the but part, right? The but part is we want to make sure that it's appropriate for what we're doing overall. So this is our proof of concept. And one of the things I also know that the city is contemplating and looking at is also understanding what their broader digital strategy is, not just for data management and so forth, but that remember the overall decision making system framework that Sheila showed at the beginning. Again, that's kind of the basis of it overall. So this is predecessor. It's starting to lay the groundwork. But it's also identifying the importance of that data and that governance piece and understanding what it is we're trying to get out of it. So I don't know if that answered your question, but if you have a follow-up.
I have a follow-up question.
Sure.
It sounds so the matrix that you shared with the decision making sounded like that was kind of the holy grail of what this exercise found is like, here's how we've distilled our decision making and how it applies from the data to the decision side, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So yes, and so that one framework that we did show or we put up or I put up, I showed it just to show kind of what we started with. What I didn't show was how we took that same framework and then really broke it out in a whole bunch of business rules around all the information that you're now seeing in that in the dashboard business intelligence, kind of an approach. And so, but there's a lot of detail behind it. All I was getting at is just having, just that basic information without the data being, help inform it. And it's people just making the decision. That's where you're going to then get those inconsistencies, even though you had the framework. We're still not applying it through that subjective approach. So it's subjectivity on top of subjectivity.
Okay. Is there a next phase like that's going to identify like a AI framework that would, I guess, take, like you said, this was the predecessor to having AI applied. And now you've defined these business rules that you would want the AI to accomplish and give you an output that's, I guess, maybe the dashboard. Um, what is there like a next phase where they're going to maybe select a type of AI framework and then try to apply it to y'all's efforts?
Yeah, I think we're still a little bit away from that. We're still trying to get some of the basics or the bases done right now and understanding some of that. But Sheila, I don't know if you have anything that you want to add as far as that question.
Sorry, yeah, can you repeat the question?
Are y'all planning any next phases for actually identifying a type of AI architecture or AI that would take this data and then use your business rules that you've created to kind of be the output of your AI? Because this is the predecessor, so then applying AI to it, you found your data, you found your outputs, and you have this decision matrix. Is applying the AI now, is there like a next phase in that from this process to the AI part?
Yeah, so thank you for repeating it. So as one of the slides I had earlier was our kind of our history. So it is very hard to implement new ideas in a municipal setting. We're very cautious, as most municipal folks know. But I think building those blocks towards AI, there is definite interest within the utility to move to that phase. However, those building blocks are still being built. We need to have our databases complete, have all of our assets scored, and the condition and risk scores kind of established first before moving into that evaluation stage where AI would be implemented. So yes, we're kind of showing the vision using this project, what can be done. And West Side was one of our smaller plants that had all of our assets listed and scored. But our other plants which are much older, we're still trying to create that asset database. So we're working on it. It is slow progress, but we haven't really identified what AI technology we would like to use yet. But we're open to it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're nearing the end of our time, so we will wrap up. The presenter's contact information will be in the slides, so if you do have extra questions, I'm sure they would be happy to answer those if you did want to follow up. I'm going to put a survey link in the chat so that you can provide feedback on this webinar. That helps us to make sure that we can continue improving these and make sure that they're kind of fitting the needs of our audience. Resources related to today's presentation and other water quality and water supply topics can be found on our Water for North Texas online library. There's reports, podcasts, toolkits, and more available on there to support your water resources and goals. And as a reminder, I will be emailing the link to today's slides, as well as the recording to those who submitted an RSVP. So if you did not submit that and you would like to receive those emails, again, please shoot me an email and I will get you added onto that list. So thank you again to everybody who joined today, and another thank you to our presenters for sharing this information with us. And this webinar is now over. So thank you, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you.